Hello, and thank you for joining us for Long Beach Symphony's Musically Speaking series, hosted by our music director, Eckart Preu. I'm Kelly Lucera, president of the Long Beach Symphony, and we are so excited to bring you this virtual series featuring interviews with world-class artists and performers. This evening, we are thrilled to welcome accomplished singer, entrepreneur, and past Long Beach Symphony guest artist, Kala Maxym. And now, please welcome to our virtual stage, Long Beach Symphony Music Director Eckart Preu and soprano Kala Maxym.
Thank you, Kelly, and welcome, Kala. It is so great to see you. Kala, we go way back. I was trying to remember when it was the first time we met. It must have been in the 90s when we were freelance singers for churches in New York City. And I remember you for, several things. First of all, you were German, one of the first Germans I met in New York, but also because of your name, which is very memorable, Kala. Maybe we can start there. Can you tell us a little bit about what it means and especially what it means to you?
Oh my goodness, what a good question. I do have to tell you though, I am not officially German. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You're excused.
I tried. So my name, I'm named after the volcano Haleakala on Maui. And in Hawaiian, it means house of the sun. So the meaning of my name, or the intended meaning, is sunshine, even though officially it's pronounced Kala. And to me, my name actually bugged me for like the first lot of my years because nobody could pronounce it. And I always wanted to be called Mary or Lisa or Kate. And it took me until my 20s to sort of go, hey, this is actually a really great name. I embrace it. And, Americans struggle with it. Everybody around the world, like, it's very simple, like phonetically, but I've come to love it.
So you were born in Germany but grew up in Hawaii?
No, I never
No.
grew up there.
No? I must have read that somewhere. I don't know.
Family
Yeah.
lived there. We have a long sort of family history of a connection to Hawaii, but I did grow up in Germany and then moved to the States when I was 14.
Okay. Well, that's enough contrasting cultural backgrounds right there. I mean, your bio is extraordinary because your path to music and singing, as far as I can tell, was not a straight one. I knew when I was 10 years old what I wanted to be, and I was a straight shot from there. And your career is and your interests are very diverse. So, for instance, you actually before you pursued singing as a career, you had a degree and pursued a degree in political science and graduated from Barnard College in New York City. I think magna cum laude, right? No less. What kind of career were you envisioning at that point? What were you going for? Do you want to become a politician or a lawyer?
I wanted to go into the foreign service potentially, or like be a UN negotiator or something like that. I really loved. I'd studied democratization. I was in love with Latin America. I wanted to do something. I wasn't quite sure what. Um, yeah, and then I got to a kind of a crossroads, and I was 24, and I was like, well, am I gonna fall into the music camp or the foreign service camp? And I said, well, if I don't do it now, will I ever do it? And so I chose that path. But I had said like, no, music, I'm not gonna be a musician. No way. Like for
So, so,
years.
so what was the deciding factor? So what kind of pushed you towards music and not towards a solid job?
Well put. Um, Honestly, it was sort of hey, if I don't do it now, I don't think I ever will, so let's just give it a go. And, if I get into a master's program, I'll go. But if I don't, because, I didn't have the pedigree, I thought I'm not going to go back to like do another undergrad. So if by chance I get into a master's program, I'll try that for a while. And I did. And that was sort of it. It was kind of by chance. Like, am I going to make it? Okay, I'll give it a try.
Um, okay, so you followed one passion, but obviously you still have a lot of passion for politics, or let's say projects that deal with humanity. I mean, you've been over the years involved in a lot of projects that I found very very interesting. Doctors Without Borders, the Chilean earthquake relief. I think there was a project about Tanzania, and I remember reading about those. So how do you combine? So are you trying to combine these two passions in your life, or why are you doing these things?
Um, that's a big question as well. I think, um, Doctors Without Borders is an organization I've supported forever. I think that, art can bring healing and beauty to people, and it's a way to get people to come to something and donate money, and they normally understand that art is worth paying for. That's an ongoing struggle, as you mentioned. It's, often not considered a real job or something like that, but that's something I believe very, very strongly as an artist and as a business owner who hires artists. But I think you can use your voice for good. And, that's something that's just always been something that was important to me. And as someone who's been passionately devoted to voting rights, which basically equals your voice, that's just something that was like always a part of my singing. It was never separate really. And then you just have to find people who are and organizations who are into that idea and want to support it and be a part of it.
And that was another thing I did not know about you, is that you worked as let me see if I get this right, a senior program analyst for the criminal division of the United States Department of Justice. So it sounds interesting. I have no idea what that means. What exactly did you do? And so when I hear analyst, I hear analyzing scores. So does this analytical thinking that you use there apply to your music at all, or is it something totally different?
So I actually think that the title is not really appropriate to what I did. I didn't analyze things. I should have been called a senior program manager because that's really what we did, but I just think analyst sounds cool. And that was my title. But basically I worked in an office with the longest title I've ever heard, Office of Prosecutorial Development Assistance and Training. And at the request of host countries, so my region of the world was Latin America and the Caribbean, we would go down. And what had happened at that time in about 2000 was we were about 10 years out of dictatorships. A lot of the dictatorships fell in the late 80s in Latin America. And they were switching from what was called, I'll make this short, I promise, but it's interesting, from an accusatory to an inquisitory legal system, which basically meant the judges were no longer in charge of making all the decisions. Now you actually had a system like what we have in the United States, but nobody knew how to implement it. So I would put together programs and people, judges and prosecutors and stuff from the US, and we would go down and do trainings there in Bermuda, Chile, Mexico, Venezuela, wherever. So that was my first job out of college on a diplomatic passport. So I was way cool.
You were very cool. I don't know how many singers have that kind of background. But let's talk a little about Chop here. Let's talk about music, because so you started out, if I remember correctly, you started out as a mezzo soprano, right? So kind of or have you always been kind of in the higher register?
So when you and I were singing together, I was a first soprano, but when I started my career, right? I don't know why I put that in quotation marks, my career. When I was in grad school, my teacher said, I think you might be a mezzo, let's try this out. And I thought, gosh, that feels really great. Sure, I'll do that. And so my career was as a mezzo. And then as I got older, actually, my voice changed and I got my tonsils out, and all of a sudden I had these high notes back. So I kind of went up, down, and back.
Right, because I mean, also the sound, the color of the voice are they're different depending on what kind of sopranos you are. So maybe we can be nerdy a little bit, and can you talk a little about the different types of sopranos that are out there and what you expect from them?
Oh my goodness, what I expect from them?
No, one. If you hire them.
Well, I guess I would preface this by saying that one of my favorite titles of any book ever was What the Fuck? Best title ever. So, if you want to kind of start at the top, you've got your coloratura sopranos, who are the queen of the nights, and the runs up and down and the super high notes to the high Fs. And you've got your soubrettes, maybe, which are your despinas, and your barbarinas, and sort of a lighter, younger voice that's very playful. Correct me if I forget anybody. You've got the full lyrics, which is what I consider myself. So your Mimis, your Verdis. Who else have you got? Oh my God, I haven't.
You got the Wagnerian sopranos. Yeah.
Right, so they're doing Wagner, and they're doing the big German guys and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think I think mezzos and full lyrics and mezzos and sometimes soubrettes actually, really can, like at Serlina, can now be a mezzo very often. And I love that, directors are casting based on quality of voice, also not just like what you call yourself. I think that's really wonderful that I've seen that. A change I really appreciate.
Yeah, yeah. And then, but what I like about it, but it's particular certain figures in operas, when the mezzo has a little bit something of something menacing to it too, it's like there's a real Charakterfach,
Yeah.
which is really really so. I mean, all I want to say is like. There's not just soprano. I'm a soprano. There's many different shades of sopranos out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think your voice, I mean, I've experienced this, so I know it to be true that your voice changes in, if you have a 30, 40-year career, you could be four different characters in that time. I never thought I would be a mezzo. That never occurred to me. And it never occurred to me that I would now be like kind of a Puccini, Verdi, and Beethoven nine singer. That I never thought of that. So.
Speaking about Beethoven 9, so we did Beethoven 9 together, and there's this much feared, just right at the very end. It's singers sit there forever, don't sing for, I don't know, the longest time. Even if you walk in the middle of the symphony, you still don't sing for a while, and then at the very end you have this this high B up there. What do you think? How do you prepare for like these crucial high notes that everybody is waiting for?
Oh man, I think it's really just it's that you have to just trust that you're going to be there. You have to know that it's there. You've practiced it enough. You know that you've practiced it at different tempi, so that if something happens on the day, you know that you can speed up. And really, at that point, right? It's yes, it's about the high note, but that's the part where the orchestra, if I'm not mistaken, like kind of isn't doing much for you, if anything, right? So you have to really be tuned into everybody else, because if you hit that high note before anyone else, you're hanging out there more than, for a bit longer than you might want to. I happen to love kind of high soft notes, so I kind of live for that moment. But it's definitely like you're focused on yourself, but your ears are also going every which way and trying to make sure that you're blending and not overpowering and not falling behind the other voices. So it's like the moment of most concentration, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And so I mean, you felt very comfortable up there. So I was never really worried. Sometimes you get a gray hair. You can literally feel it growing, the gray hair, as you approach this, depending on who is singing soprano. But not with you. So is there like a certain role or a certain part that you always wanted to perform and haven't been able to?
That I haven't been able to. Well, they all meet very tragic ends, unfortunately, but I would dearly love to sing Tosca. I have to say my current passions is actually art song and like symphonic stuff. So while I, studied opera, I actually sang one of my dream roles, which was Hansel. Like he's super dear to me. But yeah, I would say probably Tosca is she's a firecracker, and I'd kill to sing a VC d'arte and kill Scarpia. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's Tosca is an awesome opera. I also wanted to do it, so maybe we can do it together at some point. So I mean, you just mentioned. I mean, you're wearing musically so many different hats, as do many singers. But I mean, you sing opera, you sing concert, you do solo recitals. You have a choral career as well. What would your advice be to young singers who want to make a career in music today?
Learn to be flexible. Learn every style you can possibly learn. Learn an instrument to accompany yourself, be it guitar or piano, and be excellent at it, as excellent as you can be. One of the things that I wish had been different in my graduate education, and I hope has changed a little bit, is that when I studied opera, that is literally everything I studied. Only that. There was no dance component, there was no musical theater component, there was no how to be your own boss component. Of course, that was before Wix and Squarespace and color headshots. But I definitely feel there's a lack of, me being able to slot in for someone to sing a jazz concert. just, hey, can you just improvise with this band? Actually, I'm sorry, here, let's be open. I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. Can you sing this musical theater piece? Yeah, but I'm going to sound like an opera singer doing it, right? So I would say find a program that challenges you to do everything you're uncomfortable with. Excel at one thing, that's fine, but learn to be flexible. It will make you money.
And Kelly mentioned before, you're also an entrepreneur. So you do other things on the side that I find really fascinating. So I read about you that, and I didn't know there was such a thing as a California wine appellation specialist. And you went to San Francisco Wine School. I didn't know there was a wine school. Why not? I just drink. So what made you go to wine school? And is this really like I don't know what to imagine this being like.
Not a big deal, but I'll tell you what got me into wine, which is actually music. So when I was, let's see how to condense. I was being an opera singer, but I needed money. So I went to work for this tech company and I was like, I'll just be there for a year. And I ended up being there for 4.5 years. Well, during that time, I started loving wine and I was learning about wine. And I thought what was so cool about how you learned about wine was this idea of a flight, which is how you taste through, 5 versions of a grape or a vintage or whatever. And I thought, you know what? When people hear that I'm an opera singer, they always have one of two responses, which is like, oh my God, that's so cool. You sing without a mic, you sing in German and Italian. Wow, cool. Or, oh man, I'm sorry, but I really hate opera. And I thought that's what people have, like they grow up with a certain, what I call sensory ecosystem. You and I happen to grow up in the same one, but someone in Miami and someone in, Tibet has a totally different sensory ecosystem. And so I really loved this idea and I thought, could I bring it to music? Could I bring this idea to music so that people would taste 500 years of music and not have to sit with a whole Wagner opera, but go, that wasn't so bad at 7 minutes. I kind of like that. So that's how I got into wine.
And so you have this company called Five Senses Tasting, and you just mentioned like sensory things. I mean, so I think you produce full sensory events, and I was wondering what that means. I mean, are you pairing a German of wine with a Schubert song, and then an Italian wine with an Italian aria? Is that kind of how this works?
No.
Good. I don't know. I would have taken that too.
So you're not wrong. So I actually have one program that I launched this year is called Around the World in 80 Minutes. And in that program, actually, my clients select 3 countries and we go visit those countries, kind of drop into those countries for about 20 minutes each, 30 minutes each. And yes, we do pair them geographically as much as we can. But the idea is really that the music and the tasting elements represent the person's story. Or the company's story. Like I worked with Louis Vuitton, so we were bringing his life to life through these elements. And so yeah, it was a Chopin piece, but the link was really that Chopin got to Paris the same year Louis Vuitton got to Paris. So it's all about finding these tie-ins that make the senses trigger and make you have a deeper connection with something. So I could be serving a South African wine with a German song, a Wisconsin cheese, and a chocolate from San Francisco, and the story is about how a couple met in Spain. But the tasting elements, something about them, all brings that moment together perfectly.
Well, I gotta come at some point. You gotta invite me. And then you're also very passionate about, besides music, is giving to others through bone marrow transplant. Can you just tell us a little bit about your experience in that and what got you involved in this cause?
Well, I'll start with the end of that question, which is that I grew up in Germany. And so as someone who grew up in Germany, you are not allowed to donate blood. Even now, it's still on the list, like this year I checked. It's still on the list of countries that if you lived there in the 80s, you cannot donate blood. So when I learned about this, when I was in college, the person who told me this said, well, would you like to be on the bone marrow registry? And I said, I don't know what that is. Sure. And went on my merry way. And 3 years later, when I was in grad school, was called that there was a woman who was basically dying, like in the process of not being alive anymore, and would I donate? And I was like, I mean, yes, sure, of course. And so I went through the process of donating. And most people think that there's only one way of donation, which is when they extract it from your hip bone, which I've heard is painful. But there was and is now more commonly a better way to do it, which is that they take blood out of your arm, filter the stem cells out, and put your blood back in, which is what I did. And she lived for 15 and a half years after that. So that's why you should all join the bone marrow registry if you're 44 and under. Thank you very much.
Okay, Kala, you are an extremely smart, interesting, musical, beautiful singer. So it's always a pleasure talking to you and making music with you. And I hope we can do this again very soon. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Kelly because she's been collecting questions from our audience.
It's true. Kala, thank you for allowing us to be part of such an interesting discussion. You have such an eclectic background. For our audience, we'll be now moving into the Q&A portion. And so feel free to submit any questions you have. And we do have some questions coming in already. And the first one is from John, who says, Kala, from your time spent in Latin America, what countries or regions influenced you most? And does that still influence your musical taste to this day?
Oh, I love this question, John. Thank you. I would say, so I lived in Chile for a while, and so I have a real love for the country. I would say musically, Argentina is the country that I gravitate most towards in terms of like anything that I have access to sort of art song wise. I would say I had a very bad experience in Paraguay, and my mom is on the call and she will know what I mean. So we're not really into Paraguay. Also Brazil is gorgeous. Brazil is also like coming up on the wine world. So if you see a Brazilian wine, most likely to be sparkling, try it. I'm very excited to get to know those more. And there's just a lot of, what I love most about my job at Five Senses Tastings is discovering all this music that I'm looking for it with a different impetus. So I always find cool stuff like Holst songs, by the way. Who knew he wrote so many amazing songs? Anyway, tangent, but thank you. That was an awesome question.
And Shelby asks, how do you manage your schedule between being a wine connoisseur, entrepreneur, and an active performing artist?
Well, I mean, in the last year, that wasn't hard because I wasn't performing. I would say it's usually a day-night kind of thing. I mean, most of rehearsals and performances happen at night. And I realized in quarantine, like how many nights I was not doing something because I was usually either networking or rehearsing. So it's usually a day-night thing. And, you know, when I'm in process of preparing for something, I schedule an hour of practice every day at a certain time. And like, I try not to let anything get in the way of that.
So that goes with Matt's question for you both. How do you keep your voice? And Eckart, how do you keep conducting in shape during a quarantine?
Kala, you want to take that first?
Yeah. I didn't. I tanked. I had to sing a few of my own events. But you know what? Singing opera on Zoom before they did all those updates and we all figured it out sounded awful. So I didn't. And I lost my love for it in that time. Just, I couldn't find the joy in that. So I threw myself into my business 100%. I was like, that part of me isn't right now. I can't, it's too hard. But now I can come back to it.
Well, it is a social art form. So interacting with a screen musically doesn't really work. And what I notice is, I mean, the physical part for conductors is not so much a problem. You're gonna have some aches and pains maybe when you start moving your arms again for 2 or 3 hours or 5 hours a day. But it's mostly a brain issue. And what I notice is, and I'm still recovering from that your brain just shuts down when it has nothing to do. You just don't. It just shuts down. And so I feel like it was just simmering, just the absolute necessary brain activity. And that's not helpful when you try to study music. So I think now I'm just cranking it back up again so that I'm ready when we are all ready to perform again.
Kala, Rachel asks, what's your craziest live performance story? Maybe a wardrobe malfunction, a technical difficulty?
I have some of these. So I have sung for 3 presidents, 2 Chilean and 1 in absentia for Barack Obama's 2008 inaugural ball in London, where he was not. But my crazy story is for Sebastián Piñera, who was the president of Chile, when I sang for the tsunami stuff. And so I was at the time dating a diplomat, and so they were buds, and so I got to go on this cool trip to this really, really remote island, and I got to go on the Navy ship. And so I show up on this Navy ship with these like bad A bleep bleep military guys, and Sebastián Piñera goes, "Oy, la soprano, cante por favor algo, blah blah blah," and I was like, oh god. So I completely panic and I start singing Carmen's Habanera, but I can't remember any of the words. So I just start singing like French sounds, like, and I have no idea. Like I was shaking, and he, that was basically it. Yeah, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
You have one of those crazy performance stories?
Me, I don't, not so much, not so much. I button what needs to be buttoned and pray for the best. I lost my baton a couple times. I lost my cummerbund once or twice, but that's, but nothing really tragic so far,
That's good. Kathy asks you both, what is your favorite piece to perform or your favorite composer to perform?
Currently, my favorite set is Poema en Forma de Canciones by Joaquin Turina. And actually, although I love singing them, one of my favorite parts is the opening song, which is just the piano. So I like anything romancy, Duparc, Fauré, anybody Spanish. I'll kind of eat up anybody from that, like from the Mediterranean, French, Spanish, romance. Love it.
Eckart?
Oh, my favorite stuff. Oh, well, you know my favorites. Bruckner comes to mind. Brahms. Anything that emotes kind of, actually. If it's Rachmaninoff, Tchaikovsky. I love all that. I love all that stuff. Mahler, I love too. It's almost a little bit too much for me. It's too egocentric in many ways. But lots of romantic music is egocentric, so he's in good company.
And Kala, Shelley asks, where do you want to take your Five Sense Tastings company? What is your vision for that?
What an interesting question, Shelley. That is on my mind, actually. So when I founded the company, it was founded in live events, so back to live events. I have a couple other ideas that involve travel and possibly a brick and mortar. But right now I'm really loving the around the world part because I get to travel virtually with people and learn about the countries that I love and the countries I haven't visited. And I go, oh, I want to go there and I want to try this. And what I find so fascinating about it is really uncovering these hidden gems for people, thinking, they think they know Australian wine because they've had a Shiraz, or they think that they know, American music, or I don't know, like anything, right? And so just like uncovering these hidden gems, as I call them, and that's still new to me. So I'm still finding a lot of joy in that, and the virtual events are going really well, and I hope they'll stay around and we can do both.
Super. And our final question from Rick, for both of you, what is your warm-up regimen, and do you have any pre-concert rituals?
Carb load. I carb load like there's no tomorrow, and I don't speak because I have found when I talk that I wear my voice out. I'm sure that I could have someone train me to speak more healthily. But yeah, so I've learned be quiet, drink tea, and carb load.
I'm the opposite. I don't eat, but I need a nap. I don't eat, and I like distraction, actually. That the more I'm focusing on music, the more stressed out I get, and I think it shuts me. I don't know. It makes me tense. So if I can talk to other people, so that's great.
Well, that was the last question we have time for today. And thank you to our audience for your great questions and for tuning into Musically Speaking. And thanks so much to Eckart and Kala for allowing us to be part of this chat today. We enjoyed learning about you. You're so interesting, Kala, and thank you for joining us. We look forward to welcoming you on stage here at the Long Beach Symphony very soon.
Thank you. I can't wait.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and be well.